Heritage Tour, stopping at the Lyceum, the Friends Meeting House, and at Woodlawn. Heritage Montgomery, Montgomery Parks, and other partners are currently working together building bike tours, school tours, conference group tours, and marketing strategies. Opening the Visitor Center this spring, when most heritage sites begin the new season, also offers an opportunity to promote the county to the 5.1 million visitors to the C&O Canal Trail by providing a compelling, state-of-the-art destination in Montgomery County, a destination that offers an exciting story and activities, directs visitors to other sites, and encourages repeat visits to the county by showing off the great things to see and do here in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Mr. Logan or Ms. Monterville here? Guess not. Mr. Anderson, did you want to go ahead and show us the video?
Is that queued up? No. Do we have video?
Someone's going to need to step to the video plate. Or are we going to take a pass?
Yeah, well,
another time.
Another time. But I know that I believe 4 of you accompanied us on a tour of the facility, and I would just say that it includes a very highly professional, sophisticated multimedia presentation of the story of slavery in Montgomery County and also some of the Quaker history. And I'm very confident that it's going to attract more people, certainly, than have been there in the past. There's already a very brisk business with our current vendor of school trips and others. There's also the wedding facility there that attracts a lot of people. I think that with this programming and full-time staff to market it and promote it, we'll be able to build on that, and I think it'll be a big success.
Indeed. Councilmember Rice?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I had a chance to visit, and I can tell you that, again, what was exciting to me is as I pulled up, and I know that the council president was there as well, seeing the school children that were there when I was there, and seeing their delight and being able to be in the outdoors and experience the things, but also learn. And that's one of the great things that we have here in Montgomery County that's a treasure to us, the ability to teach our children about our history. And to really understand the pathways that many people took. And so I think that, again, highlighting the Underground Railroad and the interactive nature with which you've addressed this with the technology is something that I think is going to tie in and reach a lot of our kids. What we have to do in understanding how we educate our children about history really means that we have to adapt, and I think that you've done that in the approach in which you're doing it with the interactive nature of this. And so I think that that's a really valuable asset that needs to be highlighted. And so I'm very happy to see this come before us so that we can support it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you. I would agree with Councilmember Rice that the approach here is a really wonderful one. It's really 21st century. And I am a firm believer that the more that we're able to preserve our historic assets, especially as used for educational tools, in general, worldwide, we would be able to foster better understanding amongst all communities. And I feel like more than ever, this is a time where we need to do everything possible to preserve, to leverage, to create opportunities. And it's amazing because a lot of our young people don't even realize the rich history in Sandy Spring with the Underground Railroad and the Quakers, and I mean, such extraordinary partnership. And it's manifested even today. And so I know that we've done whatever we can to strengthen and really rescue some of the assets, cultural and historic assets in Sandy Spring. And to me, this is a no-brainer. We need to make sure, because once they're gone, they're gone. And so, so thank you for advocating on this and bringing it forward to us. And I look forward to raising my hand in support. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to take Councilmember Rice's comments as a motion and Councilmember Navarro's comments as a second. All in favor of the special appropriation to the Park and Planning's fiscal 16 operating budget in the amount of $84,731 for the operations of Woodlawn Stone Barn Visitor Center? Would you be so kind as to raise your hands? And that is unanimous among those present. Excellent. Then we're going to move on to legislative session, day 36. We will return to the matter we discussed prior to this, which was Expedited Bill 4815, contracts and procurement, minority-owned businesses, sunset date amendments. We have a motion on the floor from, well, you didn't have a committee meeting. Councilmember Navarro has moved and Councilmember Leventhal has seconded approval of Expedited Bill 4815. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, we're keeping you busy today.
Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro? Yes. Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Berliner?
Yes.
Mr. Berliner votes yes. Ms. Florine?
Expedited Bill 4815 passes by unanimous vote by those present. So we'll move on to a briefing with respect to the Online Diversity Explorer. I believe this came out of the GO committee, is that correct? Councilmember Navarro, did you want to make a few comments? Sure.
Thank you. So the Government Operations Committee actually had a briefing on the county's translation and interpretation services. And during that particular briefing, this was showcased, this Online Diversity Explorer, and Ms. Diane Vu has done a really wonderful job at going through this particular tool. We felt it would be great to have the council briefed and sort of demonstrate what this tool contains, because it was very obvious to me immediately that not only was this great in terms of understanding the need for our cultural and language appropriate type of services, but also it can really help us as we are dealing with policy. One of the things that jumped out at me was this notion of, who are the seniors who tend to be more isolated. And in terms of their language, the language is spoken at home, it was very clear that the decisions that the HHS committee made in terms of strengthening the naturally occurring retirement communities, where we said, we should look also to those immigrant seniors who tend to be so isolated. Well, this tool, when we looked at the demographic spread, really reinforced that. It totally validated that that is something we needed to do. And so, I felt like, wow, this can be an amazing resource for all council members as we are going through not only budgets, but as we're thinking about land use decisions, economic development decisions, housing decisions, everything like that. And here it is, an extraordinary asset just at our fingertips. So I thought that it would be great for not just the government operations to know about this, but for the entire council to have a sense of this extraordinary tool, that it can be just at our fingertips as we make decisions. So here it is.
So who is leading us through this? Diane. Okay, Diane.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Vu, and I'm the Asian Liaison and Language Access Coordinator for the Office of Community Partnerships. Thank you, Councilmember Navarro, for that introduction as to why we're sitting in front of you today. I would like to thank the full council for the opportunity today to walk you through this Diversity Explorer. It's a very cool interactive tool that was created by CountyStat that pulls together census data into interactive maps. I think that you'll not only find this tool incredibly useful and informative, but also as a great resource, as Councilmember Navarro mentioned, as you go through your planning projects. Our work with CountyStat started last year as we wanted to take a look at granular data in order to plan for future Gilchrist Center sites. Since then, CountyStat's work has expanded to data analysis for the upcoming senior summit, housing issues, a needs assessment project for McHale, and for our language access program, only to name a few. And I must say that I can't take credit for this work. I just asked Dennis over at County Stat for the information, and he plugs it together into these really cool maps. So with that being said, I would like to turn it over to Dennis Linners at County Stat.
Thank you. Good to be with you today. So in County Stat, our main mission is really to work with departments to help them use data to improve their performance. Traditionally, this has been kind of like a behind-the-scenes function, but because the county now has such a robust open data platform and other kind of online platforms that we're able to leverage, we can kind of take that analysis and then sort of share, we do the analysis for a specific purpose. So in this case, if you look at the map, it was really looking at how we could assist the Gilchrist Center matching up census data with where their clients are located. So you see sort of the heat map of where their clients are versus where the limited English proficiency population in the county is. But because we can now release this on the open data platform, these other tools that we have, any other folks that are interested in that same kind of information are able to essentially access that data just with a click of a button. And so I think we've shown this to a dozen different partners, a lot of the regional service centers, et cetera. And I'm glad to also share this with the county council also. And we're going to be updating this with the new census data that comes out in a couple of days. So we'd be very keen to also work with your teams to maybe identify what additional requirements you may have. And we can then release it both as sort of this online what we call story map tool, so I'll walk through this, but also some interactive dashboards so that you can kind of very quickly pinpoint specific data points that you might be interested in. So the screen you see here is the first page of the Diversity Explorer. We've learned through experience best not to walk through the online tool in kind of a big public forum, but you can go back to your office and access this, and we'll share the links. For the most part, I kind of have screenshots here within this PowerPoint slide. So the first thing to look at is when we're looking, this is what's called a tree map. This kind of maps out all of Montgomery County and the places of birth for residents in Montgomery County. And what you see is that the percentage of our residents that were born in Maryland, so not just Montgomery County, but the state as a whole, is actually only about a quarter of all people living in Montgomery County, which is one of the lowest rates in the entire nation. Another 42% come from outside of Maryland. You can kind of see the breakdown, the majority, the largest share coming from the south of the United States, but also this tremendously huge foreign-born population that we have. So you kind of see there the breakdown in terms of which continent that they're coming from. One of the changes just very recently is that we now have more Asian foreign-born residents than we do residents from Latin America, although that also includes the Middle East based on the definitions that census uses. So the other thing we do is we kind of look at where the foreign-born population is coming from. One interesting thing to note is Montgomery County is 42nd overall in population in the nation, so 42. But we're #1 for immigrants from Ethiopia and Cameroon. Even if you go down to the zip code level, zip code 20904 is #1 for immigrants for Cameroon for all zip codes across the entire nation. Montgomery County is #2 for the African-born population. #1 is Los Angeles County, which has 10 times our population. So you kind of see how sizable it is there. We can kind of go down the list, but #2 for Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Bolivia. #3 for El Salvador, which is our largest immigrant population. And then we also hit a lot of the Asian countries. Sri Lanka and Nepal are #4. Iran, Liberia, and Chile are #5. Peru, we're #8. And we're #9 for Kenya and France. And actually, zip codes 20814 and zip code 20817 are #2 and #3 for all zip codes in the nation for immigrants from France. And then we're also #10 for immigrants from Taiwan and Argentina. So you kind of see this broad spectrum of countries that our immigrants are coming from. This one is the same kind of visualization as I showed before. This is looking at which specific countries and continents people are coming from. So again, #1 by far is El Salvador, about 13% of all the all the Montgomery County immigrants, about 40,000 individuals. But even that is still only accounting for a fairly small share of the total immigrant population that we have in Montgomery County. #2 is mainland China and India. One of the trends there is looks like India is going to be #2 pretty soon there. Then we go into Ethiopia, a very large share of the foreign-born population as well. Then you get to Korea, Peru, Philippines. That's another rapidly growing one, it looks like. Vietnam, Guatemala, and Iran. So again, you kind of see this broad spectrum of countries that our immigrant population comes from. And so a lot of this immigration is rapidly increasing the diversity in the county. So here you can see what percent of the different ethnic groups were foreign-born. So 72% of Asian residents in Montgomery County were born overseas. For Hispanics, it's 56%. Black or African Americans, 37%, which is very high looking at the national comparisons. 11% for white non-Hispanic. And so this is a mapping of the different race and ethnic groups over time. So you see in 2010, that's when Montgomery County became is a majority minority or minority majority? Maybe both of them works. Yeah, majority. Exactly. Yeah. So you see, and right. I think I've seen it both ways. So. So if you look at kind of the second green line there, you see that even though we've had very robust population growth, it's actually, there's been a decrease in the white non-Hispanic population. And so that's made up for by mostly immigrants, but also just general diversity. This is looking at the growth in the minority population for all the different council districts. So you can see, for instance, District Number 2 in 1980, they had fewer than 5,000 minorities, and now looking at it now, it's up to over 100,000. Part of that is tracking the general population increase, but you see this almost kind of exponential growth in all the districts except for District 1. And another thing we can do is we can step back in time. So this is the Hispanic population in the county in 1980. It's kind of a blank canvas except for kind of very close to the DC border there. When you look at 1990, start to see some growth there. 2000, very, very rapid growth, and it's only continued in 2010. So you kind of see these dramatic demographic shifts in many different parts of the county. It's not just any one place. We can also look at the growth in the Asian ethnicity, so not necessarily born in Asia. And again, here you see almost exponential growth, Chinese first, followed by Indian, followed by Korean. And again, 1980, pretty much a blank canvas. 1990, you start to see some pretty rapid growth, especially in East County. 2000, it starts to switch up to kind of the Germantown area, and then kind of consolidation by 2010. So again, very rapid growth there too. When you look at African-born population, so you see heavy concentration there in kind of East County, and that's both African language-speaking immigrants and also French-speaking immigrants. You can look at the European-born residents, more in kind of the District 1 area. And so the other thing that we can do is this map that you see here comes from DTS. And every single colored dot that you see on the satellite picture there is an individual resident of the county. And then it's color-coded based on ethnicity. So this is based on 2010 census block data. And you can also take a look at this, for instance, for like Baltimore, a lot of the bigger cities in America. You usually don't see the level of integration that you see in a lot of the different parts of our county. You may have heard recently that Gaithersburg was named the most diverse city in America. Number 3 was Germantown. We used a similar kind of formula looking at diversity in terms of language and ethnicity, kind of taking the average of those. And you see on the right, they're kind of the top 15 areas, starting with Glenmont and Lay Hill, Germantown, Aspen Hill, etc. So we can also kind of zoom in much further. So this is where we're located right now. So you can kind of see the diversity even in just kind of 1 mile radius around here. And we also kind of mapped out this diversity index that we created to kind of see which parts of the county were the most diverse. The top number 1 was kind of a tie. One of those was, again, in Gaithersburg, around kind of between NIST and the Rio area. And you can kind of see how it's a very kind of integrated area, which, again, many other places you don't quite see that. In this map, what we tried to do is to get a sense of where different language speakers were concentrating. So this is a mapping of the second most popular language in each of these census tracts. So usually English is number 1. This shows you number 2. Most parts it's Spanish speaking. That's what you see in the red. But blue is Chinese, so you see especially in kind of the western part of the county, you see a lot of areas. African languages, they're very rapidly growing, is kind of very bright green that you see. And then also certain French speaking parts. If you look all the way in the very small census tract by Friendship Heights. It's actually Greek, but apparently a fairly old population there. And then if you look at the very bright red, so around sort of Wheaton, south of Montgomery Village, those are actually census tracts where English is the #2 most commonly spoken language and Spanish is the most commonly spoken language. We can also look at what share Montgomery County has for the state as a whole. So Armenian and Persian speakers, over 70% live in Montgomery County. If you look at any language, we're just 17%. And if you look at just English-only speakers, we're down to 12% of the entire state. So you see African languages at 39%, French 40%, Chinese, Portuguese, Vietnamese, lots of diversity there too. And again, if we look at national rankings, we're #4 for all counties in the United States for French speakers and African language speakers. #9 for Persian speaking population, especially in kind of District 1. #13 for Korean and Armenian. We can kind of go down the list, #15 for Chinese, etc. This is a mapping of language isolated households, so that's where a lot of this data comes into use with work with the Gilchrist Center and a lot of the other partners that we have to make sure that all the resources we have, that they're kind of concentrated as effectively as possible. And so what we're trying to do is not just to be able to kind of give these presentations, but really to provide tools that all our different stakeholders can use to inform strategic decisions, day-to-day decisions, et cetera. It started off as more of a very discrete project with Gilchrist, and so it's kind of evolved organically over time, especially a lot of the good feedback that we've gotten from Community Engagement Cluster, McKeel, lots of other partners and folks that we've shown this to. But what we'll do once the newest census data comes out is to be a little bit more systematic about how we turn this into dashboards, et cetera, that people can use. So what I'll do, this is usually pretty risky, but let's see what happens. I'll go on the website here. So the County Stat website has these performance dashboards that sit on top of the open data platform. And one of the things that we're building out there is what we call the community dashboards. And so if I go down here, I can click on language and place of birth information. So it looks like it's loading. There we go. It's the exact same thing that we use for the departmental performance plans. But so here you can look at kind of growth over time, but you can also look at the most commonly spoken languages at home. So Spanish is #1, Chinese #2, African #3, French #4. But then in orange, you can also see what share of that population is limited English proficient. Then we can if we go down here, we can look at this one in here. Let's see if we can, hopefully this will work. This is sort of looking at what the English language training needs are of these populations. And so what you see for Laotian, Vietnamese, Korean, and Chinese speaking residents, they have a much lower percentage of that community that's English language fluent. And so that, again, sort of helps with directing the resources that the county makes available for these groups. The other thing that we try to do is kind of share these, and again, this was initially just developed for Gilchrist, but it's just as easy to share with anyone else too. This is kind of an interactive map, so if you wanted to, you could, this is looking at the foreign-born population, so let me turn that off. We could look at, for instance, the Chinese speakers and where they're located. So here you see kind of concentration in actually kind of the Rockville area around here. We can look at French speakers. You see more kind of District 1, et cetera. So this is one of these interactive tools where hopefully this is a kind of an easy way for someone to use a lot of the census data that's readily available, but then what we try to do is kind of go through the effort of processing it, so that's really just a couple clicks away. Let me see, I think that's the end. Yeah, so that's the end. Here are the links for those different items. So I'd be very keen, again, to get any requirements or specific data points that you might be interested in, so that when we get the new census data, we can make sure that these dashboards are as useful for you and your teams as they are for a lot of departments that are making use of this.
Well, thank you, Dennis. That's really something, and a good education for all of us. Thank you very much, Councilmember Navarro, for bringing it to the full council. Councilmember Reamer, did you want to weigh in on this?
Wonderful use of open data, first of all. Thank you very much for the demonstration, and to the GEO committee and the council for supporting this policy. I really enjoyed the presentation. I have one small question. Do we have data on political refugees? Do we know what share of our immigrant population might be, refugee status?
I haven't looked at that myself. I don't know if Diane has any background on this. I think a lot of times that information is more reported at the state level. But I can go back and see what we have there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get that information on the state level. The state tracks the refugees.
It's not a
that
census type
No.
information, right? I
No, it's
figured
not.
that might not be.
No, it's the State Department and USCIS that
Right.
compiles that data.
Well, it's great to get such a rich picture of who we are in this county, and it may not be who, some folks realize that we are. And, that has been a change. It has been a long time in the making, but, to me, it keeps getting better. This county just keeps getting better, and it's a great demonstration of why it's a better place to live here today than ever.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer. I think this is the sort of thing we should try to create a link to on our website so people can easily find it and understand why we do some of the things we do, frankly. Help them understand that background. Councilmember Berliner.
Just very briefly, I had 2 or 3 sessions with Diane and Dennis on this so that I could understand what was taking place in our county, and I agree with the GEO chair that this information could be so helpful in so many ways. I was struggling in part with our Asian community, at least in the Hispanic community. You have a common language. How do we reach the Asian community in which we have so many different languages and their proficiency in English is so much less than our Spanish-speaking communities? So I think it just highlighted how this piece in particular is going to be so challenging to address in a way, and the conversation had begun by saying, how do we have better outreach to this portion of our community? And they raise their hand and they say, look what we are facing here. Look how difficult this challenge is. So I just very grateful for their good work. And when does the census, you had indicated that's coming up pretty darn soon, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe it's literally probably at the end of this week, if not early next week.
So we will have revised numbers.
Exactly.
Really?
And the other thing is that this kind of evolved over time, whereas with all the lessons that we learned over that, when we get the newer data, we'll kind of build them out from scratch and do it in a little bit more robust way also. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with everyone.
I promise you we're looking forward to
Thank
getting
you.
it from you. Thank you.
Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, and again, thank you so much for the way that you presented this. I am really moved to say, especially to my colleagues here, that to me this just points to the notion that however it is that we address our policymaking, however it is that we address our budget allocations, this is really important to keep in mind. When I look out, oftentimes during hearings, I don't see many of these folks coming to tell us what's happening. When we talk about the school system, for example, and the challenge that they have in educating all of our children, as you said, Councilmember Berliner, imagine, when we talk about the Asian community, and it's just not language diversity, we're talking about history that is completely different, cultural perspectives and just traditions, et cetera. Same with the African language. It's an entire continent with absolute differences in every single country. And French speakers also include Haitian, folks from the Caribbean who were here categorized as the Latin Americans. And so what I'm saying is that, this is who we are here in Montgomery County. And so I live for that day where we're not looking at these issues as niche issues anymore, or as sort of initiatives, but as part of an integrated policy approach that responds to who we are. And so I think that the first step in doing that is having this awareness. There's so many things I had no idea, and how we rank nationally, for example, with our continental African community, so what does that mean in terms of what we're doing? It's fascinating. And so I really thank you for all the work that's gone into this, and I'm really happy to hear that it's going to be updated soon, and I hope that we all use this again as a tool as we, work through our many legislative and policy issues. But I think it's really critical and it's very important. And this issue of perception that was highlighted by Councilmember Reamer is so true. But we need to be, we need to be the ambassadors and educate everybody on what this means and the contributions, that all of these folks have made to this county, and which is why we are such a great county. So it's nothing to be ashamed of or trying to run away from. It's what makes us so extraordinary here in this great place. So again, I'm just glad to hear that my colleagues feel that this is useful as well and that we can continue. Thanks.
Well, it really is. And what you told us, I think, is that about 1/3 of our residents were born in another country. That's a fundamental fact that we always need to keep in mind as we undertake our work here, as so many of my colleagues have said. So thank you very much, and we will continue to follow this along very closely. Thank you. A few business items here. The Fed Committee has a very quick meeting in the conference room next door. And then we have a public hearing tonight on the Montgomery Village Master Plan. So far, I think we have, I know we have 39 speakers signed up for that. And we will run, of course, till 2 in the morning. No, we won't. And tomorrow night, we have a meeting with cities of Rockville and Gaithersburg across the street. Thursday, across the street on Bus Rapid Transit. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. See you tonight.